Hi guys, clutter can be truly ironic. Anybody who's ever had to deal with clutter at one time or another might be like, wait, what? In fact, there are some things about clutter that can be downright bewildering, so I thought that this would be a fun subject to write about and also a fun video to make. I've helped to declutter and organize in hundreds of homes, and in this video, I'm going to share with you the funny little ironies that I've noticed about clutter over the years. If you hear anything come up that you've experienced or you can relate to, please feel free to share in the comments below. By the way, my name is Mika and I'm a writer, and I also own a small professional home organizing business. I'm writing a book series about how to have good vibes in your home, and I'm currently working on the decluttering book. As I write, I share some of what I've written for the week on this channel, and this week I wrote about the ironies of clutter and the one non-irony of clutter. So getting right into it. The first irony is sometimes when we have a very full closet, we can feel like we have nothing to wear. Have you ever heard of or experienced the conundrum where you stand in front of a very full or overflowing closet full of stuff that you've accumulated and carefully chosen for yourself over the years and think, I have nothing to wear? Or because your closet is so full, you just keep wearing the same things over and over. Then you go through the effort of decluttering and organizing your closet, and afterwards you actually have less in your closet, but all of a sudden you find that you have way more to wear and that there are plenty of outfits at your disposal. And not only that, but you actually have a lot of great clothes and accessories in there that suit you and flatter you. You might pull some things out like, why haven't I worn this? Or you might even find some things that you really like that you've forgotten about. It's often like unearthing a bunch of treasures, because if you think about it, that closet is a collection of efforts from you to find things that are flattering on you. So there's this old tip that I heard from a stylist, and she told me that if you want to figure out what colors look the most flattering on you, organize your closet by color and then see what colors that you have the most of. And that's because when you go shopping, you're generally buying what looks good on you or is flattering on you. So most closets are a cumulative of clothes and shoes and accessory of the person going on the hunt, per se, for things that are flattering enough for them to buy. So for the most part, you'll instinctively choose the right colors and cuts and styles, the ones that are like the most flattering on you. And so those are the things that you'll usually pick out and purchase and bring home to put into your closet. But over time, our closets might include things that we no longer love, or we've outgrown, or things that were given to us, or things that we no longer have occasion to wear anymore. Also, with a lot of choices and combinations, we can encounter decision paralysis, or everything in front of us, it just kind of becomes muddled and it becomes harder to make decisions. Also, with a very full closet, the ease of usability can become less functional. For example, it's harder to pull things out or put things away or to sort through your selection. And we usually don't end up exerting that extra effort to get creative when it's like not that easy, like there's like a blockage in the way. And then when that happens, we just end up wearing the same things over and over because it's easier. But anyways, this is a common conundrum where the more clothes that we have past a certain saturation point, the less that we feel we have to wear sometimes. And then people organize and declutter their closets, and the result is that there's always less clothes in the closet, but the person feels like they have way more to wear. Suddenly there's like an array of outfits that they feel great in, which makes sense if you think about it, but it's also a little ironic. The second irony is that we think that we're saving money by holding on to clutter, but it costs us. So excess clutter can cost us in many ways. The biggest cost perhaps is the unseen weight of how it impacts our peace of mind. Otherwise, on top of the initial price we paid for the item, if we paid for it, we continue to pay for it with the cost to maintain it, the space it takes up, the cost of our energy, attention, and time. The third clutter irony is when we have a lot of clutter, it's easier to accumulate more stuff. So clutter begets more clutter. And it's the weirdest thing because clutter is generally something that you want to reduce, But when you're surrounded by clutter, we end up bringing more things in. And then we end up spending more time and money and space to house items that we didn't even want or need. Clutter in these insidious ways makes you want more. And a few examples are, we might not feel like we have adequate storage, so we go and buy more storage solutions or storage furniture. Or with excess clutter, we might feel disorganized, so we go buy more organizational items to make it more functional and reduce the visual clutter. Or we might not be able to find things, so we end up buying duplicates even though we didn't really need the additional item because we already have one somewhere. Or we might feel stressed by our environment and then go shopping as a soothing mechanism, which you might think is a weird default, but it happens, and that's an irony in itself. And one of the things that I think that we're doing is we go looking for fresh energy because there's so much stagnant energy in the clutter that's around us. And then we inevitably end up spotting something, bringing more into our lives. And also when you're surrounded by a lot of clutter and when you bring something new in, there's generally not a great feeling about it, but there's also this sense of, well, what's more, one more thing amongst all the other items. And that's also pretty common. But clutter begets more clutter. And again, it makes sense if you think about it, but it's also still pretty ironic. The fourth irony is the junk drawer is actually a super useful drawer. So despite being called a junk drawer, oftentimes what I find is that we keep basic things that we reach for often in our junk drawers. Sometimes we might keep batteries in there, and I've seen junk drawers with screwdrivers that people reach for often, an emergency list of contacts, birthday candles, matches, flashlights. And it's called a junk drawer, but in most homes that I'm in, if I ask for a screwdriver or a battery or something basic but important, the person often reaches into their junk drawer. Or they say, hold on a second, it's in my junk drawer in my kitchen. And I always think it's so ironic that it's called a junk drawer. But it's a funny name for like miscellaneous necessities, I guess. And before I filmed this video, I wondered why a junk drawer is called that. And here's a great explanation. So according to WordSense, the first published reference to junk drawers is back in 1912 from a dentist in New York. And he referenced the junk drawer in the context of keeping all of his gadgets handy to where he was working. So that's an interesting little tidbit. And I know that I open my junk drawer in my kitchen at least once a week, whether it's to get a screwdriver or a flathead out, or I have incense in there, batteries, or surf wax. I don't know, it's just a really useful drawer. So I'm curious to know, how often do you open your junk drawer if you have one? Feel free to share in the comments below. The fifth irony is that we often buy things to free up time, but clutter takes up our time. So clutter and also dysfunctional storage spaces due to too much clutter, it can cost us a considerable amount of time. And when we bring things in, we never intend for this. A few reasons that clutter costs us time might be due to distractions or the general weight of clutter, increased stress, or from not being able to find something without shifting other things out of the way each time. But on another note, there are some very valuable things to life that both increase the quality of our life and take up time, such as friendships, time spent with loved ones, that smiling interaction with a stranger, feeling loved, following our life's purpose. But when we have a lot of excess clutter, we end up spending a lot of time decluttering and organizing and on our possessions in general. And because clutter attracts more clutter, we're often in the pursuit of more stuff. And this can create chaos and confusion, and it could also take time from what really matters in our lives and be a distraction from the truly valuable things in our lives that also take time but are priceless. And number 6 is that clutter seems light but weighs heavy. So I've worked in a lot of homes now, from fairly minimal to cozy minimal to cluttered homes to hoarding homes to just everything in between. And it's an honor and a privilege to work in each home. And when we clear out the clutter in each of these homes, we can really feel the difference in the space. The space always feels better, like lighter and airier and more comfortable. And there's this very heavy unseen weight to clutter, which is usually probably stagnant energy. And if we refer to feng shui principles, qi or energy needs room to flow. And when it can flow and meander, it feels better in a space. So blockages or too much stuff in a space, it creates drag. And it feels like an invisible ball and chain to the people who own the clutter and are trying to let go of the clutter. So clutter can seem light and be packaged as something that's pretty or attractive, like a vase or a picture frame or a sweater or expired toiletries in a really nice jar. But when clutter is taking up space in our homes, these seemingly light and attractive things can weigh very heavy. And just a side note about this, part of the reason why, I think, is because if you take David Hawkins' emotion chart for reference, where basically lower vibrating emotions are at the bottom and then the higher vibrating emotions are at the top, clutter is not always, but it can be mentally and emotionally associated with the lower vibrating, heavier emotions such as guilt and shame. Especially when there's a lot of excess clutter around, those are the emotions people tend to feel. So I think that's just one of the reasons that clutter weighs so heavy on us. And number 7 is suddenly a space feels much better or much worse. So if you've ever dealt with a lot of clutter or worked on a big decluttering project, you might have been working on decluttering for a while and putting in lots of work, and you keep clearing and clearing and clearing. And despite all that work, have you ever felt like you were barely making a dent? And it just doesn't seem like there's that much difference for all the work that you're doing, and you're not really seeing great results. But you continue to plug away, and then all of a sudden you feel this big shift and see this massive difference. There is the same effect with bringing things in. So it's ironic because you might be shopping a lot or bringing lots of new things in, and even though you keep bringing things in, the space doesn't really seem to be filling up that much. And then you bring in just a bit more one day, and all of a sudden the space seems really full. It feels ironic, but it's the cumulative effect of compounding. And the difference in feeling has been building up all along, but there's this tipping point where suddenly it just feels and seems so different in a space. There have been many days or week-long projects where I'm working alongside a client and we've been working so hard, but it doesn't seem to make much of a difference. And then they often ask me, like very dejectedly, like, why aren't we making a dent? Like, we've been working so hard. And then we get focused again, and then we keep plugging away. Next thing you know, on a particular day, which is no different from the other days where we're doing the same amount of work, we can feel the same, like a huge difference. And it's that cumulative effect. And when this happens, it feels like a little bit weird, but also really great at the same time. And this is common with clutter, especially in like really cluttered homes or really big decluttering projects. So don't worry if sometimes you're working really hard, but it feels like you're not seeing the progress that you'd want to see. Like it just doesn't feel like it's correlating to the amount of work that you're doing. Because when you reach that point that you feel that cumulative difference, it feels so great. But it's good to keep this in mind, that it's also true in the reverse. And that's why clutter can be insidious and seem to sneak up on us. So it's always just good to stay on top of your clutter and be mindful of the things that you bring into your space because of this. Number 8 is that clutter can rob us of peace, but can also feel comforting. Clutter can be overwhelming, stressful, and distracting, but sometimes we can also find comfort in our clutter. I think that when we have a blockage in ourselves, then we feel more comfortable with clutter, creating a blockage in our homes, because our homes tend to end up mirroring our internal state. Clutter can be both a source of stress and relief for some people. And for some people, having clutter around might even provide a sense of security for some time. This can be the case after experiencing trauma or an event where somebody's hurt you or a series of events. As you work through and heal, you might have this sense that stuff is safer than people and build this subconscious wall of stuff around yourself. As you heal and then you let go of those experiences, not forget, but just let go of the grasp on the experiences, you'll naturally find yourself wanting to clear away the clutter. And the clutter that has once served you and given you like solace now weighs heavy on you and you instinctively want to clear it away. Number 9 is, for some people, clutter can hinder clarity, but for others, clutter can cultivate creativity. So everyone responds to clutter differently, and it's funny because some people, especially some creatives and artists, find that being surrounded by clutter can help to cultivate their creativity, while others, which also includes creatives and artists, find that being surrounded by clutter makes it difficult for them to find clarity and peace of mind and generate new ideas to get work done. And it's funny and ironic that in terms of creative inspiration, people respond to clutter in such different ways. Number 10 is the irony of more clarity with multiple sweeps. Multiple sweeps means decluttering once and then going over it a second time. That would be the second sweep. So going over it a third time, it would be the third sweep. And I don't know if you've ever experienced this before, but when you go over your clutter a second time, there's less stuff, but suddenly more items seem to appear that you can declutter. And it feels so obvious, like, I know that I didn't need that, so why didn't I see that the first time? This happens and more stuff seems to appear because there's more clarity and there's less decision paralysis and our minds have to automate less stimuli. If you start out with a lot of clutter to clear or are working on this large decluttering project, it's common that on the second and third sweeps, you'll have so much less, but suddenly more items appear to declutter. I'm all for doing everything all at once in one sweep. And if you have a minimal to moderate amount of stuff, this really works. But if you have a lot of stuff that you're dealing with, declutter as if you'll do it all in one try. So then you work through things and then make decisions with your best effort, but then be open to round 2 and 3. So this is because the less stuff that you have, the more easily you can identify things that are impeding on your space. Number 11 is that clutter gives us a false sense of abundance. So clutter can create an illusion of abundance because clutter often consists of things that are unused and unnecessary and distracts us from true abundance. So I could give you an example that I've come across many times in many different circumstances over the years. But just one example is of a couple who had a bunch of stuff to sell in their garage. And they had a 2-car garage and one of the parking spots was taken up by the stuff to sell. So they had to park one of their cars outside because of this. And the couple was busy with 2 young children and they had to put off selling their items. So that stuff to sell had been in their garage for about a year. And the woman was telling me that she was sure there was a lot of value in there. There was stereo equipment, but it was a bit dated. And then there was an old TV, and then there are baby strollers and tricycles and other items. And it was so great that she had identified to sell those items. And now our objective was just to take some action to let go of them, prioritize it so that they can have their garage functionality back, and then they could put their other car in there. And so clutter gives a false sense of abundance sometimes because we think that if stuff is taking up a lot of space, there's going to be a lot of value in there. But by the time that she ended up selling everything, there was like a $250-ish profit. And so there's that irony that sometimes clutter gives a false sense of abundance. Oh, and I want to add, at that time she was getting a car wash once a week because where we live, it's like a layer of dust and it has something to do with the ocean or the beach and the atmosphere or the weather or whatever. But anyways, there's like this bit of dust. And so that was landing on her car. So she'd go and get a car wash every week at this local car wash, which is $10 every Wednesday. So anyways, if you think about adding that up, that's $520 over the course of the year. And she had left her car outside because she wanted to make that $250 off of her stuff, and it just negated any profit and it puts you in a negative. And then on top of that, the time that she took to sell the items. But yeah, so that's why clutter can give a false sense of abundance. So it's good to watch out for that. Number 12 is that we'd rather pay to store unwanted items than to let go of them, even to the point of buying storage for it. So just talking briefly about storage units. Sometimes they make a lot of sense. Like maybe you're temporarily living in a smaller space, or maybe you're running a business and need to store your inventory and supplies. Or maybe you're going overseas or in some other part of the country or out of your city and you need to store your stuff somewhere. Along with a myriad of other reasons that you might have a storage unit or several storage units. I like storage units and I've worked on a lot of them and I have nothing like negative to say about them because sometimes they do make a great deal of sense. So sometimes storage units, they make a lot of sense, but let's talk about when we pay for storage units to store items that we don't even want. I worked with a woman recently who had 2 storage units to help alleviate the clutter in her home. And initially she just had 1 storage unit and then it had become 2 because instead of decluttering her unwanted items, she had created this habit of putting them in a storage unit down the street. And then she called me when her second storage unit was full and she was contemplating a third. But sometimes these storage units might be costly and that cost might not be justified if we're renting storage units to store a bunch of clutter. So a $200 per month storage unit adds up to over $2,400 over the course of the year, and then $7,200 over the course of 3 years. And an interesting tidbit is that the global self-storage market was valued at almost $50 billion in 2022, and on average, people have more stuff than ever. So since the Industrial Revolution, then with globalization, goods have become so increasingly cheap to buy, and it's also never been more convenient to buy items that we don't even have to leave our homes to buy them. And by human nature, because we're adverse to loss, it can be very difficult for us to let go of things. So even if we're not paying for a storage unit to store our items, we might be paying rent or mortgage and then use up precious storage space to store items that are clutter. If this impedes on our living space or the feel of a room, then there's this big cost to our peace of mind, and we might make life harder on ourselves because our homes might not be as comfortable or as functional. So in this sense, we're paying in various ways to store items that we don't even want, and we're paying with time and money and energy, and sometimes with peace of mind. Sometimes we might even move to bigger homes because we have a lot of clutter and we need more storage. Which is ironic because we might be spending a lot more to house things that we don't need. So just some food for thought. And over shopping is actually a big source of clutter. So I'm going to do a short video series on it in the coming months where I do multiple videos talking about how to minimize shopping and whatnot. And so that'll be one of the upcoming book sections that I'll be writing. And there's one non-irony to clutter, which is that we can always feel it. You can always feel when there's too much clutter around you in your space, even if it's tucked away and out of sight or neatly organized. It might just come in the sense that something feels off, or the space is congested, or there's something heavy in the room that you can't quite put your finger on. Past a certain saturation point, stuff can become an impediment, and it costs us mentally, emotionally, and financially to hold on to too much excess clutter. And just a caveat to this though, is that some clutter is just fine. Most of us have some clutter, and homes feel good when they have that touch and feel of being lived in. So clearing excess clutter isn't about striving for perfection, because that would be stressful, but it's about being mindful with new purchases and what we bring into our homes. And as we live new chapters of our lives, things that might have once served us well might not be of value to us anymore. So letting go of those things when it's time. That way that item gets a second life, because our homes are our haven or our respite, and this place to feel comfortable and safe. And minimizing excess clutter so that our spaces stay functional and feel good and support our lives and lifestyles is important. So anyways, it's really interesting how you can feel the clutter that's around you and in your space. It's just like this heavy, stagnant, yet frenetic feeling. So anyways, I hope that you enjoyed this video and found it informative. If you did, could you please hit the like button, as it helps more people to find my channel and I'd really appreciate it. If you'd like to see more videos like this, please subscribe. And as always, thank you so much for watching. See you in the next video.